As I carefully examined the casualty reports displayed on my screen, chilling realization washed over me. The scanner showed that only a few million humans were still alive, scattered in isolated pockets across a single continent. The rest of the world had either been thoroughly cleansed or mercilessly glassed by our fleet during the opening stages of the invasion. The strategy had been brutally efficient. The hardest targets were hit first: military installations, aircraft facilities, and anything else that could pose a threat to us was immediately vaporized. A substantial nuclear assault was launched against our forces, but it was futile against our ship's shields. The enemy had ceased their resistance after a single cycle. Now, it was merely a matter of finishing the job and gathering a few slaves. My lord, a meek, trembling voice interrupted from behind me. What is it? Can't you see I'm busy? I snapped, spinning my chair around to face one of the weaker subordinates. My lord, oh Radiant One, Castilia has a report for you, he stammered, holding out a data pad with trembling hands. I snatched it from him and scanned the contents. This makes no sense, I muttered, rubbing my forehead as a dark chuckle escaped my lips. So, the locals still have some fight in them? Send Deus Legion down. All of it. Just then, my communications array chimed. It was Captain Verus of the Castilia. How quaint. My Lord Radiance, I have news, he announced, clearly rattled. How quaint of you to think you can contact me directly, I retorted with a smirk. One of my fleet cruisers isn't responding to my hails. Its shields and engine are shut down. I need authorization to send in a repair crew. Flame me later if you must, but I need authorization, he barked, his voice laced with desperation. Why, Verus, is that fear I detect in your voice? I replied, savoring the thought of punishing his insolence later. The communicator chimed again, 2 more captains this time. My Lord Radiance, my entire engineering crew has vanished. My ship's shields are failing. My Lord Radiance, I've lost contact with one of my enslavement teams. They are not responding to any hails. The unnatural concern in their voices was palpable. Silence! I barked, reasserting control over the situation. It seems the locals are putting up some resistance. Captain Rari, deploy the entirety of Deus Legion. We can find slaves another day, just finish them. I commanded, returning to my readouts. An hour passed, and I observed my fleet with a sense of satisfaction, only for my jubilation to be abruptly cut short. A frigate suddenly broke formation and charged towards the planet. What was that? Why did that ship break formation? I demanded in a sharp tone. We don't know, my Lord Radiance. The ship just cut comms and left. We needn't care, my Lord Radiance. At the speed it's going, it will disintegrate on contact with the ground, an underling reported from behind me. I don't care what's going on. What happened to Deus Legion? Have they been deployed yet? I asked, spinning my chair to face him. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something. I got up and looked around, nothing but shadows. My Lord Radiance, is something the matter? No, just shadows. What's the report on Deus Legion? I inquired, scanning the room more slowly this time. I swore I saw something. No, my lord. I shall contact them immediately. They landed about 10 minutes ago. They should be. The lights flickered, and once again, I saw a shadow out of the corner of my eye. Oh my. I shall contact engineering immediately, my Lord Radiance, my underling squirmed and scurried out the door. I sat back in my seat, reviewing the reports as I sipped from a cup of omeg. I nearly choked on the juice when I read the next report. 6 ships in my fleet had gone dark, 2 cruisers, 3 frigates, and 1 corvette. Their engines had shut down, shields were gone, and they had fallen silent. I quickly typed on a few keys and ordered surrounding ships to investigate. As I gazed out of the viewing port, I noted which ships were moving. One ship's lights and engine went out just as it was approaching. I knew that ship. I chuckled at the recognition as I typed its comm channel into the network, only to realize with a sudden jolt, its power was out. It couldn't even receive any comms. I laughed bitterly at my lapse in judgment and leaned back in my seat. Minutes later, the report came in, every crew member was gone. No traces of anything, no signs, no escape pods, no cowardly attempts at suicide, nothing. As I read the reports, that strange twinge in my eyes returned. Every time I looked, something would vanish. Then a new report arrived, Deus Legion had been found dead, all 6,000 of them. I stared at the accompanying pictures, fighting the urge to vomit. Missing heads, arms, legs, hearts torn from chests, tentacles burnt to a crisp, while others were reduced to piles of bones or hollowed-out armor sets. Some men's faces had turned a literal ghostly white, permanently contorted in expressions of absolute terror. And then, the cascade began. More reports poured in, scout teams vanishing, Slava units disappearing moments after capturing locals. Some units pursued the local sapients only to have their limbs suddenly rent from their bodies. Others appeared to have been mauled to death by some strange creature. Armored columns had broken down, in some cases literally falling apart while in motion. Panic began to take hold as I noticed more and more engines flaming out and communication channels disappearing from my console. I looked behind me as the lights flickered, only to see a streak of purple blood leading towards a shadow in the hallway. I stood up, grabbing my trusty sword from its resting place nearby, and cautiously moved forward. I could feel it, something, was watching me. I reached the light fixture at the end of the corridor and froze, the stench of blood overwhelming my senses. I flicked the switch on and off, the light casting a brief but telling glow over the massacred, half-eaten corpses of my underlings. A Sonny with his face eaten clean off, revealing only a skull. A Daranaz with all 6 arms missing, his remaining body pinned to the wall with someone else's spine. Several of the insectoid species serving the Empire lay on the ground, their bellies sliced open. The room was saturated with blood, red, blue, gold, purple, violet, and pink, all the colors of the Emperor's servants, now part of a macabre work of horrifying art. I noticed a shadow and swung my blade, but it cut only through the blood-stained air, embedding itself into the door frame. I couldn't dislodge it, so I grabbed the crewman's rifle instead. The lights flickered again, and finally went out. I used the flashlight on the gun to navigate back to my console, the soft blue glow from the readouts offering a small comfort. But no comms channels were open, the entire fleet had gone dark. Realizing that something was very wrong, I prepared an escape pod. On the way, I intended to wipe the ship's data core clean so the locals could never learn anything about us. I headed back down the corridor, but the bodies that had greeted me before were now gone. The blood, the death, the decay, all vanished. The walls and floor were pristine, immaculate. Suddenly, the noise around me ceased. There was nothing, just silence. I shook my head, raising the rifle as I moved into a defensive posture. The lights flickered for the last time as the ship's reactor shut down, plunging me into darkness. I crouched down, moving quietly to avoid making any noise that might echo through the empty halls. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a shadow, a set of shoulders. "Who's there?" I yelled, aiming my rifle in the direction of the noise. I moved the flashlight towards the source and was horrified to see the smiling remains of a crew member, 2 of his 4 arms missing, a leg partially chewed through, and his chest open, revealing an unmoving heart. I shrieked in terror, recoiling as I made eye contact with him, his face twisted into a grotesque smile. When I brought the light back, he was gone. I looked left, right, behind me, nothing. Panic seized me, and I sprinted towards the data core room, desperate to escape. Opening the door, my eyes darted around, searching for shadows. What I found instead were the skeletal remains of the entire computation crew, stripped of flesh and hanging from the walls. Symbols were etched into the ground and ceiling, drawn with their blood. A cruel effigy made of bones and skulls stood in the center. I couldn't hold it together any longer. I began to violently vomit in the corridor. Once my stomach was empty, I forced myself into the room, trying to set the data core to purge and overload. I retched as I moved skeletal remains out of the way, but the terminal was unresponsive. Even emergency power and local batteries were drained. As I turned to leave, a skeleton hanging from the wall dropped down, landing on me. I panicked, running into the corridor and smashing it against the window, shattering the glass.